Welcome back to Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Season 3 is here and we're excited to dive into the core of communication, relationships, and leadership.
We're your hosts, Bella and Lee, a husband and wife duo with a successful business helping couples and organizations get it together to play a bigger game and elevate their relationships and performance.
We believe in keeping it real, so each week we'll bring you incredible guests, entrepreneurs sharing their authentic experiences, along with episodes featuring just the two of us tackling the tough topics.
So, if you're ready to enhance your connections and sharpen your leadership skills, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Yeah. So one of the things that I often see is people either avoiding conflict because they've seen what it does, or having conflict because that's the only way they need to know how, but it's destructive conflict where one's going to win, one's going to lose. And I like to create the framework where conflict needs to be in service of the betterment of the relationship. It's in service of the relationship, which means that I'm not out to win. We're out to find a better path forward for both of us. So first, a reframing of what that conflict does is useful for anyone. And you pointed right at that it's not whether there's conflict or not, it's what you do with the conflict. What does it serve? So those deeper conversations, though, come at a point when the connection can sustain them. And many times people want to have those deep, meaningful conversations when they're still on the precipice, and they have to build some reservoir up of that connection. There's the idea of that people hear in culture now of the love tank. You got to fill the love tank. And that's a useful kind of thing of, have I put in enough at this point to have the connection, to have that conversation? So if you've done that, then it's easier to have the environment for that. If you have begun to reconnect, if you're no longer at the point of being always feeling like you're at odds with each other, and that's one of those indicators. Once you have begun to say, we're working as a team. And so a framing of that is to say, let's be a team here. Let's figure out, and sometimes it's useful for it to be about something that it's easy to be a team about. What's good for the kids? Some decision that can be made that you both would agree. For years, I did a class for couples who were getting divorced to help them work better together after the fact. This was a court-mandated program because the court didn't want to see people back in court. And so they wanted us to solve it, on the first go. Excuse me. And so one of the things we would often point out is that there is a central good you both have, the well-being of the kids. And so that's usually a time when a couple can say, hey, we're in this together for the best of the kids. That's a different conversation than between us.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. For sure. I agree 100%.
Yes.
But I have friends who are, either went through divorce or are going through divorce. And even the betterment of the kids becomes this point of fighting and power and control, right? So now that they're using that piece to now get at their partner. So they're still in that win-lose, because when feelings are hurt, when you are not seen, heard, whatever, it's easier to go down that path of, revenge and just winning because you didn't win in the relationship. So you're going to win in divorce.
And this was the impetus for this program. This is kind of chasing a rabbit for a minute. And that was the reason the court would see these people who a year out were returning time and again to do battle with the kids as a pawn, right? And so they're like, you're taking up our resource. They didn't really, honestly, the court didn't care how the couple was doing as a couple or as a divorced couple. They didn't want to have resources from the court. And so we realized that having experts say to them, the kids matter here, and how you deal with them matters to them, changed it, reduced how many went back to court by 65%, just because they had that information of don't play with the kids as a pawn. And so that's one of the things that I recognize is sometimes it's a stepping back a little bit for a couple to go, okay, this isn't about me winning this. This is about how we move forward. And especially within a marriage, sometimes a couple can say, okay, how can we be a team together in this? Choosing small decisions that are less controversial is a way of warming up to those deeper conversations.
Yeah, I think this is the benefit of finding small wins.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. When you're at this point where your marriage is, you feel like you have nowhere else to turn, you need some outside help to get things back on track, to start having big conversations, right? Those ones that are causing a lot of conflict, either because every time you try to have them, there's a blow up, or you're not having them at all, and it's causing a lot of internal grief because they're not being had, is starting to focus on, okay, what are some of those small wins? And it reminds me of, you were talking about this earlier about the proclamation of I've changed, right? We would actually, even when those bigger things that we started to talk about that we weren't talking about before, still very uncomfortable. Of course, the longer you're in a relationship, not only do you have all those, like the history from previous relationships, but you also have the history of yourselves and how you used to show up inside of certain conversations. So even though you're learning new meaning making skills and new perspectives that you're trying to bring in, the other person still has, when we have this conversation, it's usually an argument, and so already fight or flight kicks in.
Ready to
and
go.
You're prepping for it, right?
Yeah.
You're ready for it. And we would find the time and the ways to acknowledge each other for just the small things, right? Or even just tell ourselves, right? There's times where I'd be like, hey, I know maybe that didn't go the way that it needed to go, and we still need to figure that out. But, I didn't walk away from the conversation. I physically leaned in, and then there's times where I'd be like, hey, I really appreciated when, you gave me the space to be able to, finish my thought or something like that. And that starts that repair process. And it starts to, I think, help the other person see that, okay, although there isn't a ton of runway behind us in these new versions of us that are coming into the relationship, there's still some runway, right? Which provides that maybe there's a lot more runway ahead of us, right? And so focusing on those small wins are very important.
And I think communicating, like you said, give you an example. It was my birthday not a few days ago, and he was away. And usually it was he flies home and then takes the car, and then he goes and, he's scrambling to buy the gifts, but because he was away. This time he shows up, I went upstairs, and when I came down, there was gifts on the table, flowers, a bottle of wine. And it wasn't about the gifts. It was about, what that made me feel? Like I'm not an afterthought. Like you thought of me before you came, instead of, oh my God, it was her birthday, So letting him know that moment meant so much more than the gift. I mean, the gifts were amazing. However, it wasn't about that. That is what created that connection. That's what made me fall in love with him even more, because I was like, as a mom, you're constantly, did you do this? Did you do that? Daddy, you're always thinking about somebody else. And in our family, I always felt like I had to prompt everybody, like, what are you doing for Mother's Day? Because I was that glue. I was that nucleus that was managing all those relationships for everyone. But at some point, it's like, well, nobody's actually thinking of me, right? So in that moment, that's what mattered to me most, not the gift. It was that moment where someone was thinking of me prior to.
And then providing the acknowledgement, which then that becomes an anchor for future behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of research that's coming out about mattering, the importance of mattering, that we all have this deep need to feel like we matter, and not that we're just there as a task or somebody who's doing something, but we actually matter. And this is one of the things that often goes missing in a marriage, that a spouse, you feel like you matter to somebody when you're in this pursuit of each other, and then you hit the pause button and suddenly you go, do I matter to this person? And your example is just that you went down, saw that, and knew that you mattered. It wasn't a, do I matter? It was, oh gosh, I matter, because you put in the effort. That's such an important thing. I think that one of the it's not a shortcut, but it's a hack to keep in mind of, am I providing something that makes my spouse know they matter to me? Not think they matter to me. Do they know they matter to me? And how am I expressing that as a beginning? We talked about the runway. That's part of building that runway. As you're going, you're building the runway by making sure they matter and they know.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to elevate your life and business.
If you found value in our conversation, spread the love. Share this episode with family and friends, and let's grow this supportive community together.
And don't forget to like and follow us so we can reach more amazing people just like you.
Until next time, remember, let's not sugarcoat it. Keep it real, raw, and unfiltered.